the math is just starting to bite the system. The math is completely untenable, meaning the U.S. is insolvent and the U.S. issues the world's reserve currency. So you have a world's reserve currency issued by an insolvent. So I think that's very important. Yes, I absolutely agree. The change of administration is important, but I also would caution, just because of some of the things they're already talking about, the Noahide laws, I think early in this administration, we're going to find out that the First Amendment is going to be under attack. I know that sounds strange because of all the censorship that we've had in the past, but I think early in this administration, we're going to find out the real nuts and bolts of the Trump administration. I'm not really happy with several or quite a few of his cabinet picks.
We're here for a 2024 year in review and a 2025 look ahead. And I'd like to kick us off with an invitation to Andy and then to Bill to highlight what you consider to be perhaps your approximately 3 biggest takeaways from the year in review here on 2024. I know in my recent discussions with others on that, I've talked about gold breaking through to a new all-time highs against the dollar, silver for a good part of the year breaking through the $30 U.S. Ceiling that had been subject to and resistance for some time, Fed fighting inflation, supposedly Trump being elected, what that means, and record buying of physical gold by the central banks of the world, notably Russia, China, India, and a few others, and off-taking from the major exchanges. And any other things, or in addition to those things in particular that you want to emphasize, Andy, or anything else that jumps out to you as you look across in the big picture of 2024?
Well, yeah, I think we have to first, in terms of this center around precious metals, yeah. The central bank's buying at a level the world has never seen. And in fact, over the last 2 months, their numbers have gone up twice the 12-month moving average. This is a trend that is capping the year at a ferocious pace. They're not stopping their accumulation. They're just being a little bit more clandestine about it, if you will. They're being less transparent, less forthright, less open, and the import-export numbers coming out of London and Switzerland are somewhat paying reference to that. Of course, that's a big deal, right? But maybe not as big of a deal as a change in administration, of course. And I think most of us here would say we feel blessed that Trump has won the election and that we'll transition into hopefully getting our culture back. We've lived through 4 years worth of bizarro world where everything that all of us who I think thank God every day without putting words in your mouths that we were born in this country that gave us the opportunities that it did, where we worked hard and our merit was something that was valued rather than our lifestyle, where we didn't have to worry about walking the city streets at night, where election integrity, the integrity of our pillars of our society, the FBI, as an example, the judicial system, all of these things just went haywire. And so for me, it's a real big deal, huge deal that we are moving in a direction of getting our culture back. And I think that to me is more important than just about anything else financially. So for me, the two big deals are not only a continuation of the rampant purchasing by the central banks, but actually a doubling down as we get close to the end of the year and bringing Trump on board to restore sanity to our culture, to the things that made Americans feel special about being an American. To me, those are the two things that stand out more than anything.
Thanks, Andy. Bill, any thoughts from you on your key takeaways and observations of 2024?
Yeah, I agree with Andy. I think that the easiest, shortest way to say it is woke is dying. DEI is dying. Global warming. All of these things that are just ridiculous are dying and are being, the curtain's being pulled back. I think this year there was a sea change in, I guess I'll use the V word. The V word has been exposed for what it was. So, that's a good thing that the curtain got pulled back on that. From a financial standpoint, this year, the U.S. paid over $1 trillion in interest only. And this is the year, I think, where the math is just starting to bite the system. The math is completely untenable, meaning the U.S. is insolvent and the U.S. issues the world's reserve currency. So you have a world's reserve currency issued by an insolvent. So I think that's very important. Yes, I absolutely agree. The change of administration is important, but I also would caution, just because of some of the things they're already talking about, the Noahide laws. I think early in this administration, we're going to find out that the First Amendment is going to be under attack. I know that sounds strange because of all the censorship that we've had in the past. But I think early in this administration, we're going to find out. The real nuts and bolts of the Trump administration. I'm not really happy with several or quite a few of his cabinet picks. And I also believe that the world is going to figure out that, in Trump, nobody can fix what's already been done because it's math, and the math it's already in the oven and on fire.
That beats baked in the cake. Both of you mentioned accumulation of physical precious metals. Andy, you had emphasized it by the central banks of the world. And then you said doubling down at the end of the year. There was a apparent lull, like in third quarter, where people said, oh, maybe they're taking a break or something. But then there emerged a story beneath the story about the off-balance sheet and out of exchange methods and pathways of physical metal accumulation by the East. Can you emphasize that for those who aren't aware of that?
Yeah, well, you had China telling us that they took 6 months off from accumulating metals, which really wasn't true. In fact, the import-export numbers showed anything but that. And they were kind of caught. You saw the same thing with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia importing metals that, again, attempted to not be reported to the IMF. And the numbers are far, far, far in excess of what we are being told. Aside from that, we see, for example, as we've talked about on your show a bunch, I've had numerous confirmations from mining executives that have told me, indeed, that China's flying all around the world, mostly in South America, and buying up doré and concentrate from the miners directly, which is disintermediating the marketplace, and it doesn't get reflected in the price or calculated in terms of how much they're actually buying. And it's not just silver, it's gold as well, although 70+% of the silver they're using in industry is coming from concentrate purchases, where they're buying sludge in excess, in essence, rather, directly from the miners, paying more than the West will, sending it back to China and refining it. And so what we are seeing by all of these countries is a way for them to accumulate metal without it being cataloged or the IMF keeping track of it. And the PBOC is just a very small part of Chinese gold accumulation. The People's Liberation Army is thought to have as much or more as the PBOC because they are not required to report it directly to the IMF. Or, as we were saying with the concentrate of the doré, if metal is purchased that is under the 999 or 995 purity, that's not reported. Or if it's being accumulated by proxy, if you will, by commercial banks on behalf of the PBOC, that's not reported. And the same thing is going on with Saudi Arabia, and the same thing is going on with India. These are very large state-sponsored sovereign wealth funds that aren't reporting it. The thing about what you're mentioning in particular is that the PBOC said we stopped buying gold for 6 months. In essence, they didn't. They just stopped reporting it and tried to hide it much more keenly, if you will. And I think it doesn't do anyone any good in a world where they're all racing to accumulate gold for some reason. Does it have anything to do with the Tier 1 revision? Does it have anything to do with all of the banks, what appears to be the central banks, setting the stage for maybe some sort of a gold revaluation? It doesn't behoove them to let the world know how much they're buying. And I think the import-export numbers kind of caught them trying to do that. And if that's what they're getting caught with, my guess is there's a whole lot more they're not telling us about in terms of the way that they are very privately accumulating things around the world so that it's not directly a state-sponsored accumulation, but doing so kind of on the sly. And I think that is one of the things that I would take away from 2024 as well. And that is that massive accumulation and trying their best to kind of hide exactly how much they're accumulating and producing, for that matter, as well.
And I think one very interesting thing about this year is we finally saw the metals run quite significantly, about 30% increase in gold and silver. I guess starting with Bill, your take on this, and then also where the prices are going, maybe below some key levels.
I do want to add to what Andy was talking about. Absolutely, you've got China trying to buy directly from miners. And that's a huge deal because that means there's going to be less metal that'll make it to refiners and thus less metal available for LBMA and for COMEX. One other thing is that very interesting, back in, I think it was October, Russia announced that they were going to be purchasing other commodities, and the first one they named was silver. And I mean, silver's, the supply and demand is on a knife's edge. So you get, additional demand is going to blow up the supply. From a short-term, technical standpoint, we're oversold again. I mean, we've seen multiple times this past year where the metals bottomed. I posted, and I think, Andy, you posted my charts also, showing the bottom hooks. And I think what that illustrates is exactly what Andy was talking about, central banks stepping up and creating demand for gold. Not so much silver directly, but silver's going to move with gold. So I think that is definitely significant. And I really don't think it's important, if you're wanting to know, should I buy at 29? Should I buy at 27.75 or whatever? Who knows? And when all is said and done, it's not going to matter. The whole idea is that you're getting your capital out of the system and into something that cannot bankrupt. Because when this whole thing goes down, mark my words, the great taking is very real. And a lot of people, a huge amount of people, are going to be left with nothing.